April 1945, Predon. The cold Baltic wind sweeping across the barbed wire of Stalag Luftei near Barton, Germany. First Lieutenant Robert Abab Hoover, a 22-year-old fighter pilot imprisoned for over a year, crouches in the shadows of Barrack 104. A staged fistfight explodes near the main gate. Shouts, scuffling, guards rushing in with flashlights. In the diversion, Hoover sprints across the compound, throws himself at the double fence, barbs tearing his hands and legs. He drops to the other side, rolls, and disappears into the dark pines. Minutes later, he reaches an abandoned Luftwaffe airfield. Under camouflage netting sits a Focke-Wulf FW-190 fully fueled, engine recently run. Propeller still, no parachute, no maps, cockpit instruments. In German, Hoover climbs in, finds the starter by feel, primes the fuel, hits the magneto. The BMW 801 radial engine coughs, belches black smoke, then roars to life, shaking the entire airframe. He taxis onto the cracked runway, opens the throttle. The fighter lurches forward, tail rises, wheels lift off. A Banks West stays at treetop height, heading toward Allied lines in Holland. Below, American and British anti-aircraft batteries scan the sky. The swastika on the tail and wings is unmistakable. Tracers suddenly arc upward, -40mm shells burst close. .50 caliber streams chase him. Allied fighters could appear at any moment, guns armed, ready to shred the German planes streaking through their airspace. How does a prisoner of war steal an enemy fighter he has never flown, take off without a parachute, and survive a desperate flight where his own side is trying to kill him? This is the razor-edge gamble of a pilot who refused to wait for liberation, betting his life on skill, instinct, and the hope that friendly fire would miss, just long enough for him to prove he was American. To understand the stakes of this escape, consider the air war and POW situation in Europe during early 1945. The U.S. Army Air Force's 52nd Fighter Group, operating Spitfire Mk, Versailles and later P-51 Mustangs from bases in Italy and North Africa, flew long-range escort missions, protecting heavy bombers over occupied Europe and Germany. On February 9, 1944, during his 59th mission, Hoover was shot down over southern France. His Spitfire hit by ground fire or fighters. He bailed out, evaded briefly, but was captured and sent to Stalag Luftei, a major camp for Allied airmen on the Baltic coast near Barton. Stalag Luftei housed thousands of American and British aircrew. Conditions were grim. Short rations, brutal winters, overcrowded barracks, and constant guard patrols. Escape was extremely difficult. Tunnels were discovered, wire-cutting teams caught. Disguises failed, recaptured escapees faced solitary confinement, transferred to harsher camps, or worse. By April 1945, the Allies were advancing rapidly from the west, Soviets from the east. The German guards were increasingly nervous, but the camp had not yet been overrun. Hoover, a natural aviator from Nashville, Tennessee, had been a standout pilot in combat, known for his exceptional feel for aircraft. He refused to remain idle. He studied the camp routine, recruited 2 men for the distraction they would create chaos but not attempt the flight, and scouted the nearby airfield, evacuated as German forces retreated westward. The field contained abandoned aircraft, including several FW-190's rugged, powerful fighters with the BMW 801 radial engine producing up to 2,100 horsepower with boost, top speed over 400 miles per hour, and armament of 230mm MG-131 machine guns, plus 420mm MG-150-120 cannons. The FW-190 was one of the Luftwaffe's most capable fighters. Excellent roll rate, strong in dives, heavily armored. Hoover had engaged them in combat and memorized recognition features, but had never sat in the cockpit. No parachute was available. German pilots often flew without them late in the war, and none were on the abandoned plane. The flight would be low leva to avoid radar, but that exposed him to every ground gun below. The escape mattered because the war's end was chaotic. POWs faced forced marshes, uncertain liberation, or massacre risks as the Reich collapsed. Hoover's flight carried him through contested airspace, areas recently taken by Allies, full of anti-aircraft batteries, 40mm Bofors, 90mm guns, .50 cal M2, quad mounts, and patrolling fighters P-51s, P-47S, Spitfires. German markings triggered instant hostility. Friendly fire incidents were tragically common when pilots flew captured or misidentified aircraft. Hoover's success allowed him to reach safety, debrief, and later become one of aviation's most legendary test pilots and airshow performers. The incident remains one of the most audacious POW escapes of the war, not just from captivity, but from the greater danger of being shot down by his own side. April 1945, approximately 4:30 a.m. Stalag Luft, E. Bart, northern Germany. The camp compound is dark, lit only by occasional searchlight sweeps and the dim glow of barracks windows. First Lieutenant Robert A. Bob Hoover waits in the shadows of Barrack 104, pulls steady despite the risk. He has rehearsed this 4 weeks. Observe guard patterns, note weak spots in the fence. Recruit to fellow prisoners willing to create chaos, but not to follow him over the wire. At the signal, the distraction begins. 2 men step outside, voices rising in a staged argument that quickly turns physical. Fists flying, shouts echoing across the compound. Fight! Fight! Guards blow whistles, boots pound gravel. As sentries rush toward the gate, spotlights swing away from the far perimeter. Hoover moves, low and fast, coat buttoned tight. He crosses the open ground. He reaches the double barbed wire fence, 10 feet high, coiled razor wire on top. No cutters, no time. He wraps his hands in torn rags, grips the wire, climbs hand over hand. Barbs tear skin, rip clothing, draw blood from palms and thighs. Ignores it, hauls himself over the top, drops to the frozen ground outside. He rolls, springs up, runs into the pine trees without looking back. He moves through the woods, staying off paths, guided by memory of the layout. After 15 minutes, he breaks the tree line and sees the abandoned Luftwaffe airfield. Hangars stand empty, aircraft parked in scattered rows under frayed camouflage netting. No patrols, no lights. The Germans have withdrawn as Soviet forces close from the east. Hoover scans the line. His eyes settle on a single Focke-Wulf, FW-190, one of the Luftwaffe's most capable fighters. The BMW 801 14-cylinder radio engine sits under a broad cowling, propeller clean, fuel tanks showing full on the gauge, visible through the canopy. No parachute strapped to the seat, none available. The cockpit is narrow, instruments labeled in German, but he has studied enemy aircraft recognition charts for years. He climbs the wing root, swings a leg over, drops into the seat. The harness is unbuckled. He leaves it loose. Master switch on. Fuel selector 2. Main tank, mixture rich. Throttle cracked open. He finds the starter button by feel. Presses it. The radio coughs once, twice, then erupts in a cloud of blue smoke and deafening roar. The propeller spins into a shimmering disk. The entire airframe vibrates, shaking loose dust from the canopy. He releases the brakes, taxis out between parked wrecks. The runway is cracked concrete, weeds pushing through joints. He lines up, opens, the throttle wide. The FW-190 surges forward. Tail lifts smoothly. Wheels leave the ground. He retracts gear, stays low, 50 feet above the pines, and turns west toward Allied lines. Within minutes, he crosses into recently liberated territory. Below, roads fill with Allied trucks, tanks, infantry columns. Anti-aircraft positions track the sky. The black crosses and swastika and wings and tail are impossible to miss. Tracers rise immediately. Bright streams of .50 caliber fire from quad mounts on 40 millimeters. Bofor shells burst in black puffs, close enough to rattle the canopy. Shrapnel pings off the armored seat back. Hoover jinks hard, drops even lower. Skims, feels, and rivers. A pair of P-51 Mustangs appears on his 9 o'clock. Diving to intercept. They're 6.50. Caliber Brownings flash. Tracers streak past the cockpit, stitching holes in the right wing. Fuel begins leaking, a thin mist trailing behind. He rocks the wings violently, trying to signal. But the German silhouette overrides everything. He dives into a shallow valley, pulls up sharply over a ridgeline, uses terrain to break their aim. The Mustangs overshoot, lose visual contact. Pareces on. The BMW 801 runs rough. Now, perhaps, dust in the carburetor. Perhaps, damage from the fire. Oil, pressure, flickers. After nearly 2 hours airborne, the Dutch coast appears ahead. Flat fields, windmills, recently cleared Allied airstrips. He spots a grass emergency landing strip near Groningen. Short, rough, but open. He circles once, drops flaps, lowers gear. The FW-190 touches down firmly, bounces, rolls through wet grass, slows, stops. Infantry rush forward, rifles leveled. Hoover kills the engine, raises both hands high through the open canopy. American pilot. POW. Escape. He shouts. A sergeant approaches cautiously, sees the dog tags, the U.S. flight jacket beneath the coat. Rifles lower. Hoover climbs down, legs unsteady from the flight and blood loss from wire cuts. The stolen fighter stands behind him, riddled with friendly fire holes, swastika still bold on the tail. Unfolds in the low skies over northern Holland. Hoover has escaped the camp, stolen the plane, taken off. But freedom remains, out of reach. Every Allied weapon below sees only an enemy FW-190 flying at treetop height. German markings clear in the morning light. Ground fire opens immediately. Quad .50 caliber mounts rake the sky. Tracers converging on the fighter. 40 millimeter shells detonate in sharp clusters. One bursts close enough to shower the canopy with fragments. The aircraft shudders. Hoover drops lower, skims rooftops and hedgerows, uses speed and terrain to spoil aim. The BMW 801 strains, exhaust stacks glowing red. Then the fighters arrive. 2 P-51 Mustangs dive from above, closing fast. Their guns flash. 6.50 caliber Brownings each. 3,000 rounds per minute combined. Bullets punch through the right wing, tear the fuselage. Fuel streams out in a visible trail. A round clips the canopy, spiderwebbing glass near his head. Hoover ducks, shoves the stick forward, dives into a river valley. He pulls up hard over a tree line, the J-forces pressing him into the seat. The Mustangs overshoot, momentarily lose sight. He knows he cannot fight back. The FW-190's cannons are loaded, but he will not fire on his own side. He rocks the wings again and again, the universal distress signal. But recognition is impossible at speed. More flak rises from a battery ahead. Black puffs bracket him. He banks sharply, threads between two farms, disappears from their view. The pursuers break off low fuel or orders to disengage. Hoover levels out, scans ahead. The emergency strip appears. Grass, windsock. Limp in the still air. He lines up, bleeds speed with flaps and throttle. Gear down. Touchdown is firm. The gear struts compress. Tires skid on damp earth. The FW-190 rolls to a stop in a cloud of dust and grass clippings. Ground troops surround the plane instantly. Rifles point. Voices shout. Hoover raises both hands. Palms open. American pilot, escaped POW. Don't shoot. A sergeant steps forward, weapon lowered slightly. He sees the dog tags, the familiar flight jacket. Stand down, the sergeant orders. Rifles. Drop. Hoover climbs out slowly, hands visible. He is debriefed on the spot to camp riot. The fence, the airfield, the takeoff. The evasion of interceptors. Intelligence officers arrive, examine the aircraft, one of the few intact FW-190s captured late in the war. Bullet holes from friendly fire mark the wings and body. The fuel system leaks steadily. Hoover suffers only minor injuries. Torn hands from the wire, bruises, ringing ears. No broken bones, no serious wounds. The plane that carried him to safety is secured, later studied and scrapped. The lesson is stark. Escape from captivity is only half the battle. The greater danger can come from those who should be allies. Hoover survived through exceptional piloting skill, low-level terrain masking, and sheer luck that no burst hit the engine or cockpit fatally. In those hours aloft, he flew not just an enemy aircraft, but a target in his own sights, and lived because he refused to give up. First Lieutenant Robert Abob. Hoover climbed down from the wing of the Focke-Wulf FW-190 on that grass airstrip. In liberated Holland in late April, 1945. The radial engine still ticked as it cooled. Oil and coolant pooling beneath the fuselage. Bullet holes from friendly fire dotted the wings and body small. Jagged reminders of how close the Allied guns and fighters had come to ending the escape. His hands bled from the barbed wire. His flight suit was torn, but he stood upright as the infantry approached. Rifles first raised, then lowered when they saw the American dog tags and heard his calm voice. POW escape. American pilot. The debrief came quickly. Intelligence officers arrived, listened to every detail. The staged fight in the barracks, the sprint across the compound, the climb over the wire, the abandoned airfield, the unfamiliar cockpit, the takeoff without a parachute, the low-level flight through flak and interceptors. They examined the plane, one of the few intact FW-190s captured so late in the war, noted the German markings that had made it a target, and photographed the damage from its own side's fire. Hoover answered without embellishment, the same steady tone he had used in combat and in captivity. He did not return to operational flying. The war in Europe ended soon after. Hoover went home, but the sky never let him go. He became one of aviation's most revered figures, testing captured enemy aircraft, pushing experimental jets to their limits, performing airshow routines that left crowds speechless. He flew the first flight of the F-100 Super Sabre, demonstrated the F-86 Sabre in ways no one else could, and earned the respect of legends like Chuck Yeager, who called him the finest stick-and-rudder pilot alive. His skill was forged in combat, tempered in a POW camp, and proven on that desperate flight home. The FW-190 he stole was studied, then likely scrapped or broken for parts. Just another war relic among thousands. But the story stayed. A prisoner who refused to wait for rescue, who took an enemy fighter he had never flown, and flew it through a corridor of friendly fire to reach freedom. The greatest threat had not been the guards or the barbed wire. It had been the Allies below the very people he was trying to reach, who saw only an enemy aircraft and opened fire. Hoover lived to 94, passing in 2016. His name is etched in aviation history, in museums, in books on test piloting, and in the memories of those who flew with him or watched him perform. He rarely told the escape story unless asked. And when he did, it was simply a fence climbed, an engine started, a flight completed. This is not a story of invincibility. It is one of nerve, instinct, and the fragile line between liberation and destruction. In those hours aloft, Hoover flew not just a stolen plane, but a target painted by circumstance. He survived because his hands never faltered on the stick, because he flew lower than reason allowed, and because luck spared him when skill alone might not have been enough. The war took many things from him: time, freedom, friends. But it could not take the pilot inside. I've just said what's recorded in history. You should find out the real truth yourself. We have written the sources from which we got this story in the description of this video. And we have always been and will be supporters of the oppressed, regardless of their color, race, or country. This world and its creator are also with the oppressed. If this daring escape and the terrifying friendly fire left you stunned, smash that like button. Share your thoughts in the comments. Would you have flown that plane? And subscribe for more forgotten World War II stories. Hit the bell so you never miss the next WW2 story.